Temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vikas Pota. I'm the founder and CEO of T4, the people that are bringing to you the world's best school prizes. You know, we've come up with this idea of having these prizes because what we have seen during the pandemic is that schools that have an expertise and a specialism in certain areas have certainly fared better than others. And so when we made this list, it was a long list. These are not the only 5 areas that should be awarded, but this is where we're starting. And so what I wanted to do was provide schools an opportunity to actually understand what we mean when we say, for example, today's briefing is on how you could win the world's best school for community collaboration. And through that, you know, have a simple understanding and a practical session where we go through these subjects, because I think that's really important to help schools around the world try to navigate to make sure that you're successful in applying for these prizes. So today with me, I have with me Maggie McDonnell and Sarah Peterson. Maggie needs no introduction. She's a teacher in Canada who won the Global Teacher Prize, and she'll be giving us her perspective from a practical schools perspective. And then we have Sarah Peterson, who is, for all intents and purposes, is a community schools guru from the New York City school system or education system. And I'm really pleased that she's here with me here today as well. But before I say any more, I just want to go through in terms of, you know, some basic fundamentals regarding the prizes. And so today we're talking about the world's best school prize for community collaboration. It's important that we say that at the outset, simply because that's what we're going to focus on this particular session on. And so I want you all to understand that this is not about innovation. It's not about overcoming adversity or any of the other categories. It is firmly about how we complete the form so successfully for the category of community collaboration. So what that involves is an appreciation and understanding of the general criteria we're applying to all the 5 prizes, and then specifically for this prize. So, you know, before I bring on our guests, I want to talk about the general things that are required, because I think they're quite important to go through. So the first thing that we do ask, and it's a criterion that you have to make sure that you can answer successful, which is a very simple thing. Can your school demonstrate a commitment to excellence in community collaboration? Really basic and simple question, but so important that it's almost a checkbox. But we will be asking you how you demonstrate your commitment to excellence. The second question is, has your school developed trailblazing practices, processes, and pedagogy school-wide, right? And so that's in community collaboration. I keep on coming back to the point, in community collaboration for our purposes today. do you have evidence, quantitative or qualitative evidence, to support your application? It's all well and good that I can go out and say that I'm great, but we need to show evidence. Like, show us why your school is so great. And so that's what we want to do over here. The fourth general criterion is, can your school demonstrate the impact on the experience and life chances of its students? That is what our schools are about. And so we need to be able to demonstrate that your excellence in community collaboration has actually had an impact on the experience and life chance of your students. So that's a really important thing. And the fifth is, the prizes are a mechanism. See them as a mechanism. The mechanism is quite simply to surface incredible school-based expertise so that, we can answer this question: what can other schools learn from you? Because I think that grassroots, bottom-up approach is very powerful. And when you speak from your learned experience or your lived experience, I think it's far more powerful in informing how other schools should be doing it. So if I'm a school leader, if I'm a school that has developed this expertise, these are the things I do. And that I know that level of peer-to-peer, exchange is enormously useful and actually game-changing. And so without further ado, I bring on two of my friends. We have Sarah Peterson, who's going to join us. Sarah, we can't actually see you. I can see a yellow blob. So maybe you want to log off and log back on?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Wonderful. Okay. And we have Maggie McDonnell. So Maggie, we welcome to this briefing session. You are part of our review committee that has actually helped us design the criteria and look at it from a very practical lens. Firstly, welcome to this briefing session, and thank you for doing what we're going to go through here. But do you have any kind of background that you can provide to the schools that are watching and participating as to what the tricks and tips of success could be for a school looking to apply for these prizes?
Hi there. It's so great to join you. I'm Maggie, and I just got to say, go for it. Don't hold back. I want schools to believe in themselves, to see within themselves how amazing they are. Often, I think those in the education community, be it teachers or education leaders, schools themselves, need a nudge. And I'm here to say, go for it. In my experience, when I won the 2017 US $1 million Global Teacher Prize, it took a lot of nudges for me to go and dive into that application process, but I'm so glad that I did. I think that often schools are just sometimes doing so much, and they're doing so much kind of internally, they forget to look outwards and see how fantastic they are. So I hope that schools are out there. There's 5, if I'm correct, 5 amazing categories where they may see their strength reflected in. I'm really passionate about what I call the community category, because I just think it's wonderful that schools can act as hubs in ways that they can connect the community, bring the community together in so many, unique and diverse ways, and that we need to hear those stories. We need you to apply so that, the whole world benefits from what you're doing.
And so, Sarah, welcome. Thank you for joining. I know that there's been many time changes because of world clocks and everything. And so, thank you for joining. And I introduced you. I don't know if you heard my introduction, but you are, as far as I'm concerned, the community schools guru of New York City and the world, therefore. And so, Sarah, you've been so involved and so generous in your time in giving us guidance. Do you have any basic guidance for everyone before we actually get going?
In terms of completing the application or just getting ready? One of the great aspects of our community schools work in New York City is that our schools work very closely with their communities. They work with families and students, of course, but they also work with community members, local elected officials, even the local bodega. And the benefits are enormous, as evidenced by the research that came out through the RAND Corporation in January 2020, where it shows community schools that collaborate and coordinate reduce chronic absenteeism significantly. So they improve attendance significantly. So definitely shore up your partnerships, shore up your friends, your neighbors, your local bodegas, and get started.
Wonderful. So I want to dive straight into the criterion that we've established. so that our schools and school leaders who are watching today and in the future understand them better. So the first one that we talk about is this, which is criteria number 1, which is how do you link the school to the broader community, enhancing the range of support and opportunities available to students, families, and the community. Do you want to say a little bit about that, Sarah?
Absolutely. So linking to the broader community, kind of what I talked about, and the importance of that consultation, creating spaces where families and students and community members can come together. In New York City, we call that the Community School Forum, which is this massive event that happens every year in April. It's fantastic. People make it fun. Schools organize lots of events for the students, but also they set up tables, conversations about mental health, expanded learning time, after school programs, seeing what the community wants, listening, and conducting a full-on asset needs assessment, which they then incorporate into next year's programming. And so therefore, in that sense, the community is very much part of the decision-making process.
And so we have, with all of these prizes, it's quite important to also state that whilst we have 5 criteria, we've also made it possible that if you're a school that can only meet one of these criteria, you should still apply and you could still win. So it's not that you have to have all 5 things nailed down and you have to have expertise in. Even if it's one of these, you could win the World's Best School Prize for community collaboration. So I want to make that point to everyone. And in this particular criterion, there are 3 bullets that we actually talk about in our guidance document, which is, does the school have active, healthy, and continuous relationship with the families and guardians of students? The second is, does the school have engagement with the parent, guardian, and other community members in the child's learning and the school's functioning? And the third one is, does your school have relationships with community partners and other stakeholders in your community that impact students' lives? So it's important to say that when we talk about homeschool and community engagement, that's what we're driving at, right?
But so often, too, that engagement should look like a partnership as opposed to something where we're asking families to come to us so that we can tell them things. It's really about that shared decision-making process, which is hard to get to. A lot of our communities, and we'll get to this, I think, in the other criteria, Vikas, but they'll set up these collaborative leadership meetings that happen 3 times a year where they can really get into the data and understand it.
So exactly that. We go to that second criterion. Do you want to say a little bit more about that and the examples you've seen that work really well?
Oh, it comes right up. The shared leadership is really fundamental, if not honestly core to the whole kit and caboodle. This idea that a principal can't do it alone. That's really important to understand. Principals are in need of that shared partnership. And so therefore, setting up the structures with a community-based organization, community partners, having those meetings a few times a year with a set agenda, using data to drive decisions. So don't base everything on anecdote and inference, but have a potpourri of data. Doesn't just mean test score data or attendance data. It could be whole child metrics. But really, this conversation together around decision-making is core in setting up those structures.
So the questions that we ask here, there are 4 bullets. 1, does the school have collaborative leadership and practices that build relationships throughout all key stakeholders in the school's community? The second point is, does the school use and share data with community partners to meet students and families' needs? The third, does the school have active family and community engagement dialogue, participation, and/or programs that help reach every child with access, relevance, and/or quality holistic education? And the last one is, does the school address differences through procedures, systems, programs, and communications that are inclusive? And so that leads us to the third criterion, Sarah, which is enhance. Does your school enhance the community? Does it become the hub of the community and a lifelong learning institution? So if you want to say more on that, please.
Yes. So I love this one. I mean, this is where, community schools have been around for a very long time, really since the 19th century, with this notion that they're the hub of the community, where the community comes to it and it goes to the community, that the school is porous. And so that can look like an adult education class in the evening. We have these schools called beacon programs where the programming goes way into the evening to allow and afford opportunity for families, students who need night classes and so on to get those credits, to have that participation, to acquire that knowledge and new skill. Creating those bridges between school and community is key for a robust and thriving community. We have seen that over and over again with the research, not just the RAND study, but obviously the Brookings Institution came out with this new report called Addressing Inequity, and it's a proposal for scaling community schools nationally, and they talk a lot about the importance of the community school or school serving as the hub, and we saw that particularly over the last 18 months when community schools were able to pivot in real time and support families and students with their emergent needs during that time.
And so the 4 bullets over here are, does the school have programs that are intergenerational that enhance the school and community life? Does the school have volunteer or mentorship programs to help and support families? Does your school have projects and programs in place to help with equity and inclusiveness in the community and at school? And does the school offer programs that expand beyond the school day from before to after school, as well as during weekends and over the summer? And so that is what this criterion talks about. The 4th one may be a little bit more difficult to understand when we say integrated student services, Sarah. Can you say a little bit about this?
Oh, yeah. This one is just, honestly, it's paramount. So the concept of meeting the needs of the whole child, social, emotional, academic, physical, are all wrapped up in this. This idea that we implement services or supports for students is one thing, but getting those services and supports to the right student at the right time and their family at the right time is really what being a community school or a school that collaborates with the community is all about. A school doesn't have all those supports all the time. They need to draw on community resources to help them and to integrate those services into the fabric of the school, whether that's tutoring, social work, social programs. We see it in all of our community schools. It's one of the core pillars of community collaboration and is key to improving student outcomes.
Fantastic. And again, with that, there are certain number of bullets which I can read to you, but I won't in the interest of time. But as Sarah talked about, it's about securing and coordinating support that targets academic and non-academic barriers to achievement in order to promote that improved outcomes for students, families, and the community. And so we go to the 5th, which is around teaching and learning. And the T4 community are prolific teachers from around the world. And do you want to elaborate on this point?
Yes, and it's so exciting to be here also with Maggie, who can't wait to hear your point of view on this. But for a school that's engaged in community collaboration, teaching and learning takes it to the next level. Students see themselves in the curriculum. They see their lived experiences right then and there. And so in their adolescent mind, let's say this is middle or high school, they make those immediate connections and can jump to a future that connects to their current moment. A lot of times students don't connect to what they're learning because they can't see themselves in what they're learning. And so that culturally competent curriculum applying where they can apply their own lived experiences to what they're learning is what it means to be in a community school. And that's making those connections to community organizations in the process to help with that.
And so here we ask, does your school enhance its curriculum through the use of resources, technology, space, infrastructure, extra time, and many more things that help the whole child in a personalized way? Does a school have experiential programs and pedagogy for students to collaborate with the community? And does a school have projects and collaboration between students and intergenerational family or community members, NGOs, academia, businesses, and other schools and others, right? So this is really about enhancing access, relevance, and opportunities for all within the community, making the school the hub and a learning institution of the community, right? And so, Sarah, in terms of these particular criterion, when you think about, and Maggie, actually, I'm going to come to you on this, actually, if you don't mind. is when you see these criterion and you see schools around the world, and you have lots of international experience in Africa as well as in Canada, how do you see this play out? And so if I was, for example, a school in Tanzania, how would I relate to this criteria? What does this actually mean for my school, as opposed to a school in New York City or somewhere in Canada? Do you want to elaborate on that, Maggie?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, maybe I can just help give examples of what this could look like. I think it can just look so amazing and so diverse depending on where you are. So I'm gonna share like a Canadian Northern example. Might be the Indigenous group in the Canadian North are called the Inuit. And I've worked for the school board, the Katavik School Board in one Inuit territory in Canada. And speaking to what Sarah just said, we've done a tremendous job at our school board in like basically redeveloping a curriculum based upon the local history, the super localized community history, and turning that and giving it back to kids within their classroom. And how amazing it is for kids to go to a history class and they're literally like learning about their great grandfather or great grandmother, because that's how intimate or community driven the pedagogy can be. I think of a school very close to where I am, less than 100 kilometers away from me in Nova Scotia. It's a Mi'kmaq school, and it's another Indigenous group. And Indigenous groups in Canada have literally survived a genocide that was operated through a residential school system. So you can just imagine the tension and the challenges and the adversity they're overcoming as their kids enter schools. And so many Mi'kmaq communities now have created their own schools. And it's just fantastic. And so they'll often start their school with ceremony. It might be a smudging practice, for example, or bringing back their Mi'kmaq language, right? These are phenomenal stories that I'm hoping these schools are listening to me and are like, I'm going to apply for this prize. This is fantastic. I can think in the North where I worked, elders were so important. And often they were disengaged from the community because they had lived through horrific residential school experiences. And so much of our work as teachers, as school leaders, were to find ways to bring the elders to the school, or as Sarah said, bring the school to the elders. Sometimes I literally was taking my students to the home of an elder where they would give as a teaching, So I love that idea of being very porous and things going in multiple directions. I think you get that beautiful integration, or you're almost building a spider web of connections across your community. I think that's some of the ways that it could look. I could give a million examples, but I'll start there.
So you sent me, you shared with me on WhatsApp the other day, this great story on CBS News about dads on duty. Do you want to give that as an example to everyone?
I'm an empath. That hit me right in the heart. What a beautiful story. I think it came from Louisiana, if I'm correct, in the United States. So they were dealing with a lot of school violence, fights at schools, like exposed police are showing up, ambulances, sirens. Like, this is not a fun place to be, to learn. Think about trauma. Think about the kids. Are they in a welcoming and safe space? How are their brains able to like get into executive functioning and learn when there's like constantly this high level of violence going on? And so the parents ended up coming together, and I'm sure it was because they had communication with the principals, with the teachers, etc. And it's so cool. I just love this story. Some dads in particular got together and they said they were gonna make a schedule amongst themselves and basically be what I would call like behavior techs in the hallway, or dads in the hall. And so they have a schedule, and every day these dads, show up to the school and they just hang out in the hallway. And there's no fights ever since. And kids are just like going to class and back. And it's full of sort of what the students would call like the dad look and the dad jokes, and it's just beautiful. The kids are saying, they're enjoying it. They feel safe. They're getting teased by their dads in the hallway, but that community is now in the school. Literally the family is in the school. That's beautiful. And what a scalable like idea, you know, like that simple, pretty much low cost idea in many ways. Obviously these dads are giving precious time, but they're giving it to their kids in their community. And that's beautiful. I mean, that's precious. I would love that.
So Maggie, in terms of the question that comes up is, well, if I'm a school, how do I apply for these prizes? Do you have a response to those people?
Okay, first, you can do this. You need some internet. So if you're on the digital divide, it's a bit hard, but hopefully you can find some good internet. And you go to the website, and in the website, there's a place, I think it's a yellow button where you literally click like apply now. And then it asks for your email address and it makes sure you're not a robot. And then it's going to send you the package right to your email. And then from there, you're going to see the basic application guidelines, the basic criteria. I think, I believe that this year, they're only able to accept applications in English. So if you are not as comfortable in English, maybe try to find an ally in the community. If you're a hub school, you got lots of friends, you know, get English over you with some of that final details at the end. And then I believe it does prefer that you do all of the application in one shot, I would call it. So you could take a few days with your school leadership team, with your teachers, to look over all the criteria, look over the questions, you know, take some time to sit with that, to think about what your examples might be. You know, how do you shape, you know, trailblazing practices, or what does your evidence look like, or and talk to your students and your former students to think about really what are those highlight stories of how your school has transformed their lives, you know. And I'm sure there's some salient ones out there. So sit with that for maybe a week or 2 or 3. Maybe use the if you're in the northern hemisphere anyway, come, you know, holiday break, to sit and stew with that. And then come January, boom, pound out that application, press send, and wait for the good news to come in your inbox.
And so it's important to just go through a few things. One is we only accept applications written in English. It's important to say that. So as Maggie said, if you're applying for community collaboration, you will know someone who writes English, I'm pretty sure. And so please ask them to help you with your application. The second point is on length. You know, we give word limits. And so we say that, for example, in some of the questions, there's a certain amount of words as a minimum you need to have. If you give us less than that, that doesn't demonstrate that you actually are participating fully to us. And so we ask you, if we ask you for 200 words, give us 200 words. Don't give us 100 words, because we want to make sure that we have enough information that we can actually understand what your expertise and specialism is. The third thing is you need to have your school authorities' permission to apply. What that means is your principal, your headmaster, your headmistress, you know, they need to be on board. You can't just apply without their authority. And so you need to make sure that the whole school becomes involved in some way or another by making sure that your school principal is. And then you have to think in terms of, when you write these forms, you know, you have to be able to communicate clearly in writing. You know, think about your grammar, think about your narrative, think about your punctuation. All of these things matter when it comes to actually filling out the form. So I want to make sure that we do that. Maggie, do you have something to add with this?
I just want people to go for it. Like, don't hesitate. Like, believe in yourself, believe in your school. Try to invest, you know, 20 minutes today. If you've seen this broadcast, you're at school, grab 3-4 teachers together, say, hey, let's go for this. Like, seriously, you're doing good stuff. And you know you are, right? Take that time, put a little group together, and then just say, okay, in 1 week, let's double check on this and let's set a deadline where we're going to get this out. Because I think in my experience, what often happens is I lead people to the website, and I'm like, you got to do this, you got to do this. And they're asking questions and they're liking it on Facebook and etc. But then they never go for it. They need that final nudge. So please, please, please do that.
Okay, so we have people watching from around the world. Sarah and Maggie, you know, we have someone from the Philippines, Memia. We have Shams from Bangladesh, which is phenomenal. Yeah, and Nilofer is from Bangladesh as well. We have someone who hasn't put the name but is from Pakistan. We have Kokilavani from Malaysia. We have someone from Syria. How amazing is that, right? Amar Aksosi from there. We get asked a question from Dr. Muhammad Mahmood Hassan. How do you select the best school? Well, that is exactly what we're trying to help you with today. So if you just rewind this recording, you'll understand what it takes. Hello from Pakistan. Muzaffar is from Tajikistan. The question is, does this prize only support public schools or NGO schools? Maggie, do you have a response?
I believe it's all schools can jump in on this. Am I correct, Vikas? It's like wide open. So you're a school, jump into this.
Sarah, I should introduce you to Sandeep, Bali village in Rajasthan in India. I don't know if you've ever been to India. This is the Fab India School, very famous, and Sandeep is a very eminent person. So thank you for joining, Sandeep. And so it goes on. This is the link that actually Maggie was talking about, which is quite powerful. That talks about it. Annika is from Romania. Look at the spread of people here today, which is fantastic, right? And on and on it goes. I'm just looking for if there's any great questions. Obviously, the Philippines we've covered. And so, Maggie, what are some of the questions that are being asked in the application form?
Let me just think about that right quickly here. I think it's asked you to basically demonstrate, like, how does this collaborative leadership and practices, like, how do you build relationships with your school community? What does that look like? How do you share your data? What does active community engagement look like in your school? Tell us, share us. We have to learn from you too. What are the procedures or programs or communications that make your school inclusive or equitable? Teach us. That's what schools are great at. So please share your story and put it out there.
And so the questions that we're actually asked are as follows, which are more specific, right? And so we ask you to introduce your school and the context that your school is in. And so not everywhere is like a... Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, I thought you were asking a question. Again, it's about the context. The second is, and Sarah, I'd love to get you to answer this question. The second question is, describe the expertise your school has developed in this area, which makes you a candidate for the World's Best School Prizes, and tell us why you deserve to win the prize. That's a mandatory question. How should a school answer that, Sarah?
Well, it's a really hard question to answer, right? Because there are so many schools out there that are probably doing such incredible work, authentically engaging their community. The very first step in the process of answering that question is to bring together your community authentically in conversation about what you're doing around community collaboration in response to all of those questions. And how is the group what does everyone think? And pull together all of the answers and summarize those answers into a succinct, coherent response. And it'll be very compelling. I mean, really, where community collaboration is set apart from, frankly, all other metrics is that, and things that you can do as a school, is that you're working closely with the community to co-create a school for the benefit of the students in the school, the families in the school, and for the greater community. And so there is no other better strategy, in my opinion, and the research supports this. And so how you talk about that will matter, huh?
Your advice is bring the school together and try to answer that question, right?
Bring everyone together, have meetings, have conversations, collect answers, and then synthesize and summarize those answers in response to each of these questions. Don't try to do it by yourself as one individual. That's not what this is about.
And so then the third question we ask for you to actually talk about is, what was the specific challenge that you overcame as a school that led you to developing this expertise? So in community collaboration, was there a trigger point? Was there a starting point as to why you thought about this in particular? That's what we're asking over here, right? The fourth question is, we're interested, and I'm sure, Sarah, you'd be interested as well. who or what has influenced your thinking in this area that has resulted in your developmental journey? It could well be, your answer could be Sarah Peterson's research. But we want to know who in the community collaboration piece has actually influenced.
That would be amazing and completely, I can't even imagine. I'm sure it was a student who said, oh, I wish we had an after-school program.
Wonderful. Then we're talking about what were your school's key learnings in this process, right? And so that's really important because we're trying to make sure that other schools learn from you. And so share your successes and your failures and the things that didn't go so well as well, because these are important learnings. And the last, the penultimate question is, what would your school do differently? Like, you've gone through the journey, you have the scars on the back or the experience that you've lived through. What is it that you would do differently in applying for these prizes, right? And then the last two questions are, please describe what the next steps are for your school, and if you win, how will you use the prize money? Did I share with everyone that we actually have prize money? Do you know what the prize money is? Does anyone know?
Well, I know.
You could win $50,000 for your school, and not that is what motivates us, because it doesn't. But wouldn't that be useful? And so, how would you use it? We're keen to know, we're curious to know actually how you'd apply that money. But again, one of the benefits, Sarah, of when we think about actually, applying for these prizes is what happens if I don't win? What is the upside? Sarah, do you have a response to schools that think like that?
Oh, wow. Yeah. In fact, I was just sort of reflecting on that very question as you were talking about the prize money. I think really where schools transform and get better is when they are able to learn from other schools. And so you, as a pioneer in this space, doing great work around community collaboration, will model that, write about it, it'll be codified, and we'll be able to share it on an international platform so that all of these other schools can learn from it. It'll be completely transformative for
absolutely.
the
So the public goods that come out of this are just immense, actually. That's why we're quite excited about it. Now, Nina asked a question, which I want to answer, which is, we ask you for what are the 10 specific steps for developing this expertise? Can it be less or more steps than 10? Well, we say a minimum of, I think it's 3, if I'm not mistaken, and a maximum of 10. And so you have to succinctly actually distill, this is the first step we took, this is the second step we took, this is the third step we took, and then if there are more, up to a maximum of 10. So I hope that answers your question, Nina. Ladies, Maggie, Sarah, any final words? Sorry, Maggie, go for it.
I have to jump in on that slide you were previously showing, on that first part about basically explaining your context and your background. I can't emphasize that. You're be basically presenting your story to probably a very international jury or audience. And so often, if we're coming from rural communities or we're schools, we're used to collaborating or talking with schools that look just like us, So I'm a tiny little village Arctic school. I'm used to talking to tiny little village Arctic schools. But try to remember how to explain your unique story to a global audience and really bring us into where you are. And so sometimes, there's stuff when you're within your own community, things that you don't even mention. It might be, of course, in for example, East Africa, we have like really big issues with gender or high teenage pregnancy rates, or kids don't have laptops, they're working off, if they have a cell phone at all, the data rates are extremely high. Like, explain all of that, make sure that the jury knows your context and what it really looks like, and it'll be just super compelling. So I can't stress that enough.
Absolutely. And Sarah, in terms of, if you work in the community school space, right? In New York City, you've seen some incredible stories of success. Would you say these lessons are replicable in these different contexts?
100%. And so often we get that. Well, you're in New York City. You have 1,600 schools. You serve 1.1 million students. In fact, everything we've done here is replicable in a urban setting, a rural setting, a small town, a small village, a massive city. And that is because the fundamentals are really about authentic engagement with your community, whoever that is, authentic partnership with families, because we know that when that happens, student outcomes improve, and the coordination of services, because you're using data in real time to make decisions. You're not leaning heavily on inference and anecdote. You're using data to drive your decision making, and you're doing it authentically with your community. And I completely agree with Maggie. Like, this is not about sort of painting a fluff piece. This is an authentic portrait of how you achieve this type of community collaboration, the challenges you faced. How did you overcome them? How did you get back up and do it? And what is that resilience there that allowed you to achieve that? And I just think it'll be so great for others to learn from that, because we do all need that. We all need to hear other people's stories in order to see that we can do it too.
And so often there's this, I know, Maggie, I'll bring you in a second. Often there is this notion, Sarah and Maggie, that, not all schools are in high resource environments, right? I'm not just particularly speaking about private schools or that kind of thing. Is it necessary that, can you see a case where low resource contexts, schools in these kind of contexts could win the prize?
100%. Yeah, I think it just makes the story incredibly compelling. I think also to point out to you something Sarah brought in at the very start of this conversation was, so often we do needs-based assessments, but there's also like asset-based assessments, and often communities are full of like talents, connections, relationships, really special and fantastic histories, resiliencies, hopes, so many gifts and resources that are there. So much generosity or volunteering. Like when I shared that dad story, I don't know if that would happen at a school maybe that was more privileged economically, for example. Would and I'm not saying that in a way to judge it all, but would it be able to come together in that same way? Are there gifts as well? There's so many gifts sometimes in communities that are overcoming challenges, because often they do need to be quite tight-knit to overcome those challenges. So this is a category that helps celebrate that strength.
So I flashed this message up, and Sarah, if you're not aware, you should also know that Hanan Al-Roub is a previous winner of the Global Teacher Prize. In fact, before Maggie. And what she has done in Palestine, in her context, I think is quite important and interesting from the World's Best School Prizes perspective. And I think her school and her practice is a demonstration that you don't have to be in the richest part of the world to win an incredible global prize. So Hanan, it's lovely to see you. And actually, we have a prize category which I have in mind for you as well, which I'll WhatsApp you about after. But thank you for joining today. Sarah, Maggie, any final words of advice or encouragement for everyone before we finish this call?
My only last word on that is that community collaboration is a critical way to center equity and create a supportive environment for your entire community, not just your students. And the results are ultimately a transformed academic institution and a community that is very engaged, and it can lead to amazing things. So just remember that, and thinking about how you're organizing your responses to the application.
Maggie, final word?
I'll say two things. One, just in case this broadcast is going out to like people who are not just teachers, it might be parents, community members, a mayor, an executive, etc. If you're connected to a great school, give them the nudge. Let them know you're a community member who's involved. So it can also, the push can come from you outside the school as well to get them involved. Please do that. If you're listening, get schools involved. And the second thing is, trust me, any school that's a great school is collaborating with the community. You might have become so normalized to yourself, you're not even aware of it, but just take a moment, unpack, and you're like, yeah, we are connected to this community in so many entangled octopus web types of ways. And write that story down and share it with us. We need to hear that.
Well,
yeah, find me on Facebook. I'll help you. I'll help you if you need it. I'm here. I'm on Facebook.
You're going to get hit up by all these schools, Maggie, to say, can you help us complete this form?
And I speak English.
In a very impartial way. You will say, "I'll get you some help."
I will get you some help. Direct you to resources.
Sarah, please know that I'm very grateful to you for all the effort that you've put in with this, helping us with the criteria, the questions in the application form, and in today's session. Please know that I'm very grateful. And Maggie, as always, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your practical advice. It really matters. And you're a fabulous school leader, school teacher. We hope your school's going to apply as well. And
I'm putting the pressure on them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. And I'm going to end on this video. And our next session next week is going to be around environmental action. And so we're going to say, how are you going to win the world's best school prize for environmental action? Thank you all. And until then, goodbye.
Temperature rise will bring widespread devastation and unprecedented extreme weather.
New coronavirus cases emerge across the country.
Obesity rates have more than doubled in kids.
Cape Town is running out of water.